Hi everybody, Carmen here with Quality Sewing, and today I am going over how do I use feet to help my quilting. So I love that there are so many different sewing feet. I don't know how many of you have been into one of our store locations. We have 10 locations all around Western Washington. And what's amazing is, you walk into our stores and there's this whole wall of feet, like so many different feet. Every brand, every manufacturer, they make a ton of different feet that go with our sewing machines. And sometimes I'm sure when you're looking at that wall, you're sort of like, wow, there's a lot of them, but what are they going to do for me? So today I'm going to take a little bit of time and just focus on quilting feet, because that is one segment. And if you are a quilter, or maybe you're hoping to become a quilter, having some of the right tools makes it work better. So one of the first things is, how many of you have a quilt that is, maybe it was hard to square, or the block wasn't quite right, or your points weren't quite lined up? Well, there are many reasons that can happen. So the first thing when we're quilting, and I'm not going to talk deeply into this, but the first thing for quilting, of course, is that we need to make sure we're cutting our fabric straight, right? So you want to have a good rotary cutter, you want to have good rulers, good mats, all of that good stuff, right? The next thing, which I have a little iron here to remind us, is pressing, right? Pressing is a really important part of our quilting, because we really want to make sure all of our seams, I'm not sure, let's flip which camera, that's good enough. Our seams are flat and nice, right? So pressing is also really important. But the thing that a lot of times, the thing for feet that's helpful is the 1/4" foot, okay? Because if you want to have perfect seams every single time, after you've taken all the time to do all of that cutting, right? And we know that sometimes cutting, like look at the quilt behind me, right? Cutting out all of those shapes can take some time. You want to make sure that when you're piecing it together, everything is lined up. So there's a couple of different 1/4" feet. So I have 2 of them here. And what's great about a 1/4" foot is, what's great about these 1/4" feet is that they have these little flanges. So let's see here. I think you can see it. There we go. Okay, so there are 2 different 1/4" feet here. I'm not quite sure the best way. I'm just going to see what the camera's looking at. Here we go. There are 2 different 1/4" feet here. The way a 1/4" foot works is it is going to keep your fabric, if you keep your fabric lined up to the edge here, you're going to get a perfect 1/4", okay? Now this is a clear 1/4" foot. There's a lot of varieties of these 1/4" feet. So 1 is there's clear ones. 2, there are clear ones with flanges. 3, there are metal ones with no flange, or metal ones with a flange. So my favorite style is the one like this that has this little flange. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe we'll see it better when we're sewing. But there's this little metal flange right here. And what's great about that is it's going out a little bit beyond the edge of my foot here, and it makes it really easy for me to keep my fabric lined up. Okay, so I'm going to put this one on because this is my favorite style. We're going to put it on my machine here, and I'll show you how it actually works. So let's see here, I have 2 pieces of fabric, and I'm just going to sew them together. And what is great about this is, I don't know if you can see now, let me have my hand out of the way. This flange is lined up to the edge of my fabric here. And so it's going to keep a perfect 1/4" for me. And since the guide is coming out a little bit longer, it actually makes it a lot easier for me to go straight. Because part, of course, of having perfect quilt blocks is you got to have some straight sewing. And so this is great because I'm just keeping that fabric lined up to the edge there. And then I'm going to cut my threads. And then you can see that this is a perfect scant 1/4". And it's so much easier when you have a foot that is helping you, because it just keeps it lined up for you. And like I said, I've got both of these here. You can see the 2 different styles. There's a couple of different styles of these 1/4" feet. The other thing you will notice, let me see if you can see it here, is they also all have markings on them, so they help when you turn a corner. So you keep that 1/4" all the way around. But my favorite are the ones with the flange, because I just think it's easier and you can sew nice and fast. And it's sort of like when you're driving, you want to look a little further forward, and you can just drive nice and straight. Okay, so those are the first 2. So the next quilting foot is one of my absolute favorites. I have this whole little box here. So there are some nice organizers if you are somebody who has a lot of the different like feet, because of course right here on this table I think I have like 8 different quilting feet or something, but there's tons of other specialty feet out there. There's basically a foot for almost anything you might want to do. So I have my little feet in here. So the next one I'm going to pull out here is my stitch in the ditch foot. Now, for those of you who've been sewing for a long time, there was a time when we didn't have a stitch in the ditch foot and we had like an edge guide foot, and that's what we used, but the stitch in the ditch foot works so much better. So the stitch in the ditch foot also has a little flange, and I think I'm going to show it down here. I think maybe it shows better on the machine. I'm going to put it on the machine here. And with both of the feet that I've spoken about so far, they both only have a spot for a straight stitch. They're designed to be used for straight stitches. You know, they have a little bit of wiggle, but they don't have the full width, so you wouldn't want to do a big wide zigzag on them or something. So stitch in the ditch is pretty awesome, because if I am quilting, right, and I want to keep my lines like marked up right here, if I want to just go straight down, and normally you would have your top and your backing, your middle and your backing, the batting and the backing here, and if I want to keep this totally straight, all I have to do is, once again, there's this flange right down the middle now. Instead of a flange on the side, there's a flange down the middle, and I can just sew, and it's going to just keep me straight in my ditch, which is pretty cool. And it makes it nice and straight and perfect. And I am right in, I don't know if you can see there, but you can see how tight that is in my ditch. You could almost not see it, because when you're quilting and you're doing stitch in the ditch, generally you don't want to even see that stitch, right? What you want to see is you want it to create that texture, because as you're quilting, you're creating all of that beautiful texture in a quilt. I have a nice big sample here to show you. So this is one that is all lines here, right? So you could do stitch in the ditch in the lines, or the other thing you could do is like what we've chosen to do on this one is we've used decorative stitches to go down the lines where you can actually see the stitching. So there's lots of different ways to do, oh, look at this, she's zooming all the way in, love it. But there's lots of, you can sort of see the stitch here. And this is just a little squiggly stitch, or you can use that stitch in the ditch foot and go straight down, so it just creates the texture. But this is what I mean about, right, normally when you're quilting, you've got your top, you've got your batting, and then you have your backing, and you're quilting it all together. Now, one of the tips, we have a question. What is the quilt behind you? I know, I love this quilt so much. This quilt is a free, I believe it's a free pattern, it was a free pattern from Moda. A couple of years ago, because this is a fabric collection that I believe is a Moda fabric collection, and I don't remember the name of the fabric collection. We can probably look it up, but for those of you who know Reva and I, this was one of the very first fabric collections we ever bought when we brought fabric into the store locations. For those of you who haven't been customers for a long time, you'll know that we've only had fabric for about 3 or 4 years in the stores, and this is one of the very first collections and one of the first quilts Reva made, and I do adore this quilt. It is just so gorgeous. And we are so lucky. Let's see. What is the best foot for quilt as you go? Denise, we will get to that. I think it depends on which technique you're using and what you're doing. I will find out though for you, and we will get that posted here. Okay, so so this is fun. So if you were going to do something like this, where you want to have like maybe more of a zigzag stitch, and you want to have more zigzag than your stitch in the ditch foot is going to allow, right? Because your stitch in the ditch foot is a pretty narrow opening for the needle. You could use an open toe foot. So let's grab out the open toe foot from my little bin of goodies here. So the open toe foot, which is right here. Let's see if I can probably just show it. It is clear. Maybe if I show it on this side, this is where I get confused with the black background. It has an opening right here. So an open toe foot makes it really easy for you to be able to see where you're going. So if we throw this open toe foot on, there's lots of uses in quilting for an open toe foot. One, it would be great if you were doing like a zigzaggy stitch or some sort of wider stitch, sort of like how they were doing on this quilt. and you wanted to be able to see, line up, there's a little, you probably can't see it on camera, but there is a little notch that shows you the center of the foot, so you could keep it lined up with your line here, and then you could do a decorative stitch, or some sort of, just like a wavy stitch would be fun. But the other place where decorative stitch, where the open toe foot is really helpful, is when you want to do applique. So I made a little shape here, I cut out a little heart, and if we were laying this on here, and you can see now, if I was using this for applique, I can keep my foot lined up. There's a little red notch in the middle, so I can keep that lined up to the edge of my applique piece of fabric, and then I would just pick, you know, a zigzag or whatever I was using for my applique stitch. We'll just say I was using this, and I'm just going to go over that edge, and it's going to keep me lined up on that edge point, if that makes sense, on the edge between the edge of your heart and the fabric. Cut that so you can sort of see. So you can see it helps you just keep all lined up. You can see it there, all lined up as you're going around the shape. An open toe foot is great because you have so much visibility that you can really see everything. Okay, so that is another great foot that I think is great to have in your toolbox. I sometimes use an open toe foot for things that are not related to quilting, right? Anytime I'm using like a decorative stitch, and maybe I'm making a bag or something, and I've drawn lines of that I want to follow because I'm going to do decorative stitches or something, you can keep it lined up with that open toe foot. Open toe foot feet are very helpful, and it's clear, and part of where the clear foot is helpful as opposed to a metal foot is because then you can see the fabric under the foot as well. So that is the other one, next one here. Open toe. Okay, so we've talked about piecing, right? 1/4-inch feet are great for piecing. We've talked about applique. We've talked about some easy quilting, right? Stitch in the ditch is one of the easiest forms of quilting because you are just following lines. It's also easy to throw in a swervy decorative stitch somewhere, right? But some of the other more advanced quilting techniques involve free motion quilting. And I say advanced because they are harder. I personally am not very good at free motion quilting. I tend to do a lot of stitch in the ditch and just sort of swirling lines because those are easy, and but there are a lot of people who are super good at free motion quilting, and it's really fun to see what people can do with it. And then there's also ruler work. So let me show you what those feet look like because they look quite different. So I'll pull them all out here. I have 3 different feet that are in here. And these 3 feet, oh good, nice, look at that. See, we just got this little pile of feet going here. Okay, so there are a couple. This is a really traditional free motion quilting foot. It has a clear foot on it, and the reason why it's clear is once again so you can see. These feet have a sort of like a spring in them. So you can see how it moves a little bit here. So the foot itself can move up and down. And that's because you're going to lower your feed dogs, and you're going to do all of the driving with all of the feet. All 3 of these feet are all going to work in a similar way where you're going to lower the feed dogs, you're going to have your machine on your straight stitch, and then you're going to use the fabric to drive the design. So this is a very traditional one where it is a clear foot. They also now have free motion quilting feet with an open toe. And I really love the open toe because then I can really see where my needle is going. The clear one, of course, helps a little bit as well because it's clear, but I really like an open toe free motion foot because I can just see better with what I'm doing. And then finally, the one we'll talk about at the end here is a ruler foot. So let me just toss this guy on. So one of the handy things that is handy to have in your toolbox is one of these little screwdriver helpers, because this is one of the feet that is not a snap-on, so you have to actually unscrew, and it can be really helpful to use your little helper here because then it's easy to find. So I'm going to put this guy on and tighten it up, and you can tighten it up with your fingers or you can tighten it up with your little handy screwdriver guy. So I'm going to slide this out because I do want to lower my feed dogs, and most machines have, you know, a way to lower your feed dogs. For this machine, it's in the back of the machine, so I'm just going to slide my feed dogs over here, lower them, and put my extension table on. So an extension table is not a foot. But if you're going to be doing quilting, having more space for your quilting is super helpful. So like this is one of the extension tables that is a Baby Lock branded extension table. I'm sitting in front of the Baby Lock Brilliant right now. And there is this style of extension table you can get from the manufacturer, but there's also, I brought one of these out just to show you, So Steady also makes these really beautiful acrylic extension tables of all different sizes. So if you want a really big one, like this is bigger than the one I have on the table that I'm using at the moment. If you want a larger one, these are all custom cut for your machine. You can order them on the website or on our in our stores, but these are great as well because it really expands your space, so it's easier for you to be managing that piecing and the quilting, because sometimes when we struggle with our piecing and quilting, it's because we're just, you know, a little bit too tight in our space, right? Having a flush surface to work on is super helpful. Okay, so now I put the free motion open toe foot on. I'm just going to go back to my straight stitch. I'm going to move all my feet here. Maybe I'll set them down here so they're easy to get to. But also so I'm not just brushing them off the table. So here I have a top piece, I have some batting, and I have backing all together. So we can play with free motion quilting here. So I'm just going to lower my presser foot, and then I am going to just start driving here. And you can see I am moving and creating my design. And you can see where having an open toe can be helpful because you can really see better what you're doing. And there's traditional stippling, which is sort of what I'm doing here. Sometimes you could also do things where like cross the line. Sometimes I personally find that easier. But what's great about the open toe free motion foot is I can really see what I'm doing. One of the things around, so you can sort of see there, I just did a little free motion. It's not particularly beautiful. Like I said, I'm not amazing at this, but like all of these things, the more you play with it, the better you get at it, right? Like I have actually free motion quilted an entire quilt for my dad, right? But that was because I practiced and then I just sort of picked my style. And what I really recommend when you're trying to do free motion quilting is really just relax, have fun with it. You know, nobody's going to get upset at you if you make one little mistake. Just sort of roll with it, right? Because it should be a fun, creative process. And whoever, like, I suspect many of you are like me, and when you make things like quilts, you give them as gifts, someone is going to be so delighted that you've taken the time to make them something that they will never notice the little thing. I always tell people, look at your ready-made clothing. There are lots of errors in them, and none of us ever notice them. So don't look at your stuff too closely. But this is the free motion quilting is really great with this open toe. You could also do things where if I wanted to like try to follow a line, I could do something like that if this is a big flower. The open toe foot is also great for thread painting. So there's lots of different uses of these different free motion feet where you are driving. Now, one of the things that I don't have it here to talk about because I didn't bring a Bernina machine out or one of the machines that has a stitch regulator, but there are machines out there. Right now when I'm doing free motion, my stitch length is defined by how fast the needle is going and how fast I am moving my fabric. So I need to stay really consistent in my speed so that way my stitch length stays the same. But what's great about a stitch regulator is that is going to adjust the speed of the needle based on the speed that you are moving the fabric. So your stitch length stays the same every time. So if one of your struggles with free motion quilting is that your stitch length is really small and then really big and really small and then really big, and you've had a hard time making it stay the same, a stitch regulator could be a good choice for you, and there are quite a few machines now that have them. Most of the Bernina machines either come with the BSR, which is the Bernina stitch regulator, or you can add it on. There are some Janome machines that have stitch regulators now. The brand new Brother Avenir and the brand new Baby Lock Radiance that will be launching in late fall 2024 here. They both are going to have built-in stitch regulators. So there are some really great options out there, and there are more and more options with stitch regulation that can really help for things like free motion quilting. So the last, I guess I actually have 2 more feet because I forgot about one that's in my little bag here that I noticed when I pulled out the free motion quilting feet. But the other foot I wanted to talk about was a ruler work foot. And the way this guy goes, I'm going to just pull off this foot. He goes on just like the others where you have to have your ankle off to get it on. And this guy you even have to pull there we go, pull the whole thing out. But the way that a ruler work foot works is you would have an acrylic ruler, and then you're going to drive, if my hand is the acrylic ruler, you're going to just drive the needle and that foot along the edge of the ruler. They're looking for me. I left my ruler in the other room. This is what happens when it's live, y'all. It just happens sometimes. We're missing the actual ruler because it's not here. But you just drive it along the edge of the ruler, right? So if like this hand is my ruler, you would be driving it along this edge and then it would create that shape. So what's cool about rulers is you can create a whole bunch of beautiful shapes with a tool, right? Because you have a ruler that is going to give you the different shapes, whether it be a circle or maybe it's a fan or it's like a wave shape, any of those fun different shapes, a heart, you can use that ruler to help you. But once again, it's all free motion, meaning you're guiding how fast or slow the machine is working, so you're creating that stitch length. Okay, and then the last thing is this guy. So this is a walking foot. So if you have ever been quilting, which would be like you have your backing, you have your batting, you have your top, right? And you have had puckering, or you feel like your machine's not feeding very well, a walking foot can be very helpful. Now, some machines have a built-in walking foot, so they call it some form of dual feed. Like many of the FOF machines have a built-in dual feed, so it's a lever that comes down the back here, and it goes like this and holds all of your layers of fabric together. So that would be a built-in walking foot. FOF has them, Bernina has them, some of the Genomes have them. Which is pretty awesome because then you can use any of these feet with that dual feed at the same time. But if you don't have that, almost every machine has a walking foot. And a walking foot you put on, and this is the accessory foot you use in that moment. So instead of using a stitch in the ditch foot, or instead of using one of these other feet I've talked about, you use this, and this guy goes on, and then it is helping, it has its own like feed dogs on the bottom here, and it is going to go like that basically, and it's going to hold all of those layers of fabric together, so that way you don't run into puckering in your quilting. So very helpful foot. So I think that those are all of the feet that I have for you today. There are literally so many fun sewing and quilting feet out there. I would recommend trying them. I would also recommend, for quilting for sure, I would try any of these if you don't have them. We have them, almost all of them, on our website or in our store locations. All of the quilting feet are very popular, so they should be in stock most of the stores. And the thing about the quilting feet is, once again, they come in all different brands, right? Brother, Baby Lock, Janome, Bernina, FOF, Viking, they pretty much, you name it, they're gonna have these feet. But, if you ever are struggling with anything sewing wise, right? Like, I don't know, maybe you're doing cording, maybe you're doing binding, I don't know, anything, always check and see if there is a foot that will help, because they have really been creating, 25 years ago or 20 years ago when I first started working in this industry, there were quite a few fewer feet, because they hadn't created all the feet based on what the things that we want to do to help us out. And now there really is a foot for like most of the things that you can think of. And if you're ever sitting at home and you're just struggling with something, give us a call, pop in the store, and see if there's a foot that can help make it like way easier, because I am a big fan of having the right tools, because we all know if you have the right tools, it's more fun, we can sew faster, we're more relaxed, it's awesome. So I hope this was helpful. And if you have the feet at home, get them out and play with them, because they're fun. We are here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. with a different How Do I. I look forward to seeing you soon.